By early 1945, Europe was burning. Cities lay in ruins, armies were exhausted, and yet the war was not over. The Allies had broken through the beaches of Normandy, crossed France, and were closing in on Germany's heart. But there was one thing they needed more than courage, more than manpower, and even more than firepower. They needed fuel. Without fuel, tanks stopped. Without food, soldiers fell. Without ammunition, victory was impossible. And so, as the war's final months unfolded, an unsung force emerged, a machine of steel and steam, moving day and night to feed the Allied advance. It wasn't a tank, it wasn't a plane, it was a train, a lifeline of iron rails and roaring engines. This was the Toot Sweet Express, the fastest, most secret logistical operation of World War II. You sent the summer of 1944 was supposed to be the beginning of the end. The D-Day landings had succeeded. The Allies had liberated Paris. But with victory came a new problem: how to keep millions of men supplied as they chased the retreating German army across Europe. The farther the Allies advanced, the longer their supply line stretched. The ports in Normandy were hundreds of miles behind them. Roads were shattered by bombing, bridges were gone, and the once mighty Red Ball Express, a fleet of trucks that had kept the front supplied since D-Day, was struggling. The Red Ball had been a triumph of speed and organization, with tens of thousands of drivers racing across France, but trucks could only carry so much. Fuel shortages, traffic jams, and breakdowns slowed everything to a crawl. By winter, it became clear the Allied advance was in danger of stopping completely. Something had to change. You sent. In January 1945, deep inside Allied logistics headquarters, a plan took shape. If trucks couldn't carry enough, why not use trains? Railways were faster, stronger, and could move far greater loads. The Allies already controlled much of France's railway system, and engineers had been working non-stop to repair bombed tracks and bridges. So the idea was simple, but revolutionary: a high-speed daily rail supply system that could rush critical materials straight from the ports to the front lines. They called it the Toot Sweet Express, a name born from the French phrase tout de suite, meaning right away. It was the perfect name for a service that couldn't afford to wait. You sent the Toot Sweet Express was not just a single train, it was an entire network, a lifeline of steel stretching from the port of Cherbourg through Paris and all the way to the front lines in Germany. Every day, trains loaded with fuel, ammunition, spare parts, food, and medical supplies thundered down those tracks. Each one carried up to 385 long tons of cargo, the equivalent of hundreds of trucks. Every train was fast, heavily guarded, and prioritized above all other traffic. Rail dispatchers cleared the lines ahead of them. Engineers worked through the night to keep tracks open, and soldiers along the route knew when they heard the whistle of the Toot Sweet, they were hearing the sound of survival. The trains didn't stop for long. They dropped their loads at forward depots where supplies were distributed to divisions fighting at the front, and then turned back west for another run. It was a relentless rhythm, day after day, night after night, feeding the Allied war machine as it pushed toward victory. You sent the Toot Sweet Express wasn't run by generals or strategists. It was run by railroaders. Men from the U.S. Army Transportation Corps, British engineers, and French railway workers, all working side by side. Some had been railroad employees before the war, others were soldiers who had never seen a locomotive before. But all of them understood one thing: every train that reached the front meant lives saved. They worked under brutal conditions: bombed bridges, frozen rail switches, and constant danger from German air raids. Even in early 1945, the Luftwaffe could still strike, and trains made easy targets. But the Toot Sweet kept running. Engines repaired, tracks cleared, schedules met. Every whistle that echoed through the French countryside meant another Allied division would eat, fight, and move forward. You sent to understand how important the Toot Sweet Express was. You have to understand what it carried: fuel, for the tanks of Patton's Third Army, ammunition for the artillery that pounded the Siegfried Line, rations for soldiers who hadn't eaten fresh food in weeks, and replacement parts for trucks, jeeps, and weapons worn down by endless fighting. Even mail from home was loaded aboard, boosting morale at the front lines. The trains became the arteries of an advancing army. Without them, the Allied push into Germany might have stalled before reaching the Rhine, but with them, momentum returned. Patton's tanks roared eastward. British and Canadian forces broke through northern Germany.